Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
Good evening, malcontents. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Malcontentment Happy Hour. I am David the Malcontent.
And I am Jennifer, and we are actually together physically in person, and it's very weird.
It's awesomely weird.
Yes.
Today is Wednesday, not Thursday. Today is Wednesday, June 9th. Thank you, Thea. I really appreciate it. I see your comments down there about the studio. Thank you very much. We can actually see all of your comments in a big screen that is almost like I don't have to do this whole head down thing anymore. It's just right there in front of us. Jennifer, this is great having you here.
I know, it's very weird to me. It was like kind of an adjustment at first because we've been, apart for so long, and wow, these lights are bright. But I'll get used to it.
Yeah, and I know we'll get used to it also. And, fingers crossed. So far, we have people just saying, wow, they can hear us. We don't have...
Yes, look, I'm so much clearer. Thank you, Dora.
You can hear us. You can see us.
Yes.
We're off to a good start here in Studio 3. I know that you've got some news for us.
Seattle is the first U.S. city to reach 70% vaccinated. That's like herd immunity. That's a big deal. 70% of residents 12 years and older, 78% of residents 12 and above have had at least one dose, including my 14-year-old son. Lumenfield mass vaccination site is closing down. There are still COVID cases, but 97% of those testing positive are unvaccinated. Get vaccinated, right, David?
Yeah, absolutely. Get vaccinated because... You've got a 97% chance of not getting COVID. I know I had somebody going, see, it doesn't work. And then my response to that was, provide me a link to any vaccination that is 100% effective.
Exactly.
Any vaccination.
Exactly.
Hint, you're going to be looking a really long time to find a vaccination that is 100% effective. 97% effective is actually...
Really good.
It's really impressive.
Yeah.
Particularly in the timeline that they went and all that. And, Jennifer, I don't think the vaccination works because I am still a hopelessly cis white guy. I have not turned gay yet.
And my Wi-Fi is no better.
No, my Wi-Fi still sucks. All right. And on that note, Jennifer, I've got a story here out of Kirkland, and it's creepy. It's a creepy ass story out of Kirkland. Hey, focus on me, camera. Focus on me, hello. Me. Thank you. We're still working the kinks out.
Glitches.
Kirkland guy, teacher, he was arrested on 4 counts of communication with a minor for immoral purposes, which You have to be careful as much as I want to editorialize on this because I don't want to get sued, but the word pervert comes to mind. I said it comes to mind. I didn't say it. Nathan Carey Marino Williams, 29. He is from Kirkland. There's something I forgot to say. We probably have a bunch of people tonight who are joining us that found us on the Wall Street Journal.
Wow. If you're joining us from the Wall Street Journal, hi, welcome.
Welcome. And this is our first night in our new studio. So anything can happen. I'll tell you that. He's a resident out of Kirkland. He was a teacher, at Brightmont Academy in Redmond. He met what he thought was a 13-year-old girl online and started chatting with her on a dating app. And despite the fact going, hey, dude, I'm 13. He was like, I'm totally cool with that. And started sending sexually explicit messages and pictures and doing what I believe the word is called grooming. But Jennifer, there's a twist. He wasn't talking to a 13-year-old girl.
Of course not.
He was talking to a police officer. He was arrested on June 2nd. Bail was set at $70,000. His arraignment is on June 17th. Look, we don't celebrate people getting, Jennifer's an abolitionist. I'm like trying to figure out where I'm in all this. I'm glad this guy's not on the streets.
Yeah, me too. I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. So I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, we got some more news.
You got something.
So a man pleads guilty to fire set at East Precinct. We covered this story last year on June 12th. I was not here, but we covered it before I was here. Isaiah Thomas Willoughby, 36, has pled guilty on federal arson charges. Willoughby put a small pile of debris and rags against the wall of the East Precinct, poured a small amount of some kind of accelerant, and then people put out the fire with fire extinguishers, scorching on the sidewalk where the fire was set. He was arrested on July 14, 2020. He's been in jail this entire period. He's getting up to 5 years in prison, and he was a former, not current resident of Seattle.
So when this happened, we were there. We weren't there when there was very few people actually were there when the fire was set. It was set in the very early morning hours, but we were there almost just a few hours after it was up there with our cameras. And there was just a very light kind of scorch mark on the sidewalk. That's all there was. It was set. I'm not trying to minimize. I'm just, arson. Oh, I see they're trying to burn a police station down. Yes. This was a very small fire. When we say a can, we're not even talking a can this big. Malcontent News is brought to you by Soup. Soup for your family.
And the most aerodynamic tuna, Bumblebee.
As approved by Donald Trump. Again, diversity of tactics. Just because we show it doesn't mean necessarily agree with it. The fire was put immediately out, as you said. He's been in jail since July 14. It'll be interesting to see what the sentencing on that happens. On the subject of CHOP started 1 year ago, technically 1 year and a day.
Yes.
But CHOP started 1 year ago today, and I'd like to walk down memory lane for a minute.
Let's do it.
There used to be a police officer barricade. They shut that down about an hour ago. Now
we're not going to evacuate or abandon the East Precinct.
City of Seattle came in, boarded up, fenced off, put in these concrete barriers. They put in some water-filled barriers that have basically all already been moved. Seattle police abandoned the East Precinct, and for about an hour, no one knew what to expect. Then it became clear. Protesters were not going to let anyone harm the East Precinct building.
If you see a person of color being targeted by violence, we demand that you step in and help them. We need to make sure that we are not unfairly blamed for any damages to this building.
Seattle Councilperson Sawant started to address the crowd, but she was stopped when it started to sound more like a campaign speech. She was then challenged to explain her stand on defunding or abolishing the police.
I will give you an answer. I'm not going to bullshit you. Okay? That's the starting point.
Okay, wait. So I gotta, listen y'all, hold up. I'm doing this for a reason. So look, horseman, right? What about those demands? Sorry.
The racial stereotyping shocked the crowd. The man, who went by the street name Magic, would never hold a microphone and chop again.
That's the reason you will not catch me saying abolish police or defunding 100%. Not because I don't believe in it, but because I know what it will take to win it. So let's, and another item of no bullshit. Winning 50% defund is going to be goddamn hard.
That was quite the day on the 8th. I got up there with my camera just as the gate came down.
Yeah.
And I was running because I'd heard and I drove over, and I actually didn't even start streaming, and I got all the way up to the East Precinct. And then I was like, wait a minute, where the hell am I? And then I realized, like, whoa, I actually just went up the street because there was nothing there, and then started the stream. Happy B-Day, Chop Chaz, you went before your time. Very true.
Yes.
There we go. Now people can see when I'm throwing the paper there. We have more to talk about.
Absolutely.
About Chop and Chaz. But before we get into that, are we ready for the land acknowledgement?
We are. Malcontent News comes to you from the occupied homelands of Coast Salish peoples. We are grateful to live and work as guests on these lands, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. This land acknowledgement is but one small gesture in the ongoing process of working toward repairing and sustaining relations with Coast Salish lands, waters, peoples, and their other than human kin.
Jennifer, thank you so much for that. I really like that you've brought that back, or brought this into our show. God, it's been like 7 months now. It's hard to believe.
I know.
This is the part of the show where I tell people, go ahead and spam those hearts. Mess around with the Facebook and Twitter algorithms, make people think that there's actually something worthwhile to watch over here. If you're watching us on Twitch and you can't spam those hearts, that's okay. If you're a Twitch subscriber, you can go ahead and use our emotes. Thank you, Rosa, for those amazing emotes that you did for us. We still don't have a spot for Yoda, so Yoda's over there.
Oh, hey, Yoda.
Yoda's over there at Studio 2, so we don't have that. And on a break, I'm going to have to move my focus mark here very clearly. The focus mark is not behaving on the camera. There, fine. You happy, camera? You happy that I'm there? That it's shifted off the mark, or I've actually shifted off the mark. It's on me. All right, there we go. I moved off the focus mark. Back to what I was saying. If you're watching us on YouTube, look, we love you over there at YouTube, but all you can do is just, love you mods, love you admins, love you editors, writers, Jennifer, David. Just please not in a creepy way. All right.
Yes.
All right, and we're going to go and pull into our next story. Ed, check this out, Malcontents. Something new tonight. Live interview. We hope.
Fingers crossed.
We hope. And with that, like, share, follow, subscribe. That's the biggest way you can help us grow. It's the easiest way you can help us grow.
All the creepiness.
And it's free. The creepiness?
All the creepiness.
All the creepiness. I love it. I love it.
Thank you, Rex206. We love the creepiness.
Yeah, see, we can see your comments. It's like this is just such a better setup out of the gate. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and roll up for our first story. Our first real story. Guys are killing us in the comments. You're just killing us.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thanks, Courtney. I'll take creepy from you any day of the week. So Courtney is the one who gave us Yoda. dead. So one thing that CHOP is going to be remembered for, it's going to be remembered for the artwork. Within hours of CHOP forming on January 8th, there was already artwork being created there. On June 16th, the city of Seattle agreed with CHOP organizers, no leaders, but they came to an agreement with CHOP organizers, a loose coalition of people, to allow vehicle access through certain areas. And they put up what they call them ecology blocks. They're 4,000-pound chunks of concrete. There were a lot of people who were very concerned about it. I expressed my concern on the 16th. I thought it was a bad idea, and it proved out to be a bad idea. That's another story for later in the month as we go through and go over the history of CHOP. But one of the things that the city did is they had put up plywood around the sides of these blocks, specifically so that people could come in and do artwork on them. Artists were working on the installations right up until July 1. So right up to about the moment that the Seattle Police Department was moving in, there were people still working on art. And to that point, I do have a clip that I want to share, and then we're going to bring in our guest, I hope.
Yay.
On June 6th, which is one of the days that pepper spray and all this other stuff was deployed, while all the screaming and yelling and the police and the squaring off was going on, this artwork was actually being painted. The dude was hired by this company, Stout, to come in and paint over these boards and create not all of the artwork you hear, but to kind of do these African flag colors of the red, black, and green. And so you had this guy painting while there were thousands of protesters here and probably 60 people from Seattle Police and another 60 to 100 people of the National Guard backing them up. It was like, and I was live streaming at the time, and I was like, this is dystopian.
So all of that was shot on June 30. There is a person that is painting a Breonna Taylor painting there, and her name is Sakura. We have Sakura in the green room right now. Jennifer, we're gonna turn up the juice and see what shakes loose.
How's
Sakura,
it going,
can you
David?
hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
And we can hear you! All right, so now our audience in the comments, can you hear Sakura? That's the
Help us out, guys.
That's the question. We're going to wait and see Sakura if they can hear you. That's the only part that's missing right now. But I'm pretty sure they can. Sakura, you got to say something though.
Hi, I'm Sakura. I'm an artist, and I painted 2 paintings in the CHOP, one of George Floyd and one of Breonna Taylor.
Oh, this is. We're just so excited that actually this this all works. They can hear you. We can see you. We can hear you. We can see you. This is our first remote interview, and thank you for your patience on me getting your name wrong. So I appreciate that. Tell us about your motivation. I know that I actually interviewed you twice up there. I interviewed you when you were painting. Actually, I might have interviewed you 3 times. I know I interviewed you painting George Floyd. I know I interviewed you painting Breonna Taylor. And now that I think about it, there was a third, like a mural, not a mural. I mean, when I say a mural, I mean it's within that piece of wood. But you were doing a third piece, if I'm remembering this correctly. And I think that was the first time I ever talked to you.
Huh. Oh, okay. I mean, I might have been working on one of the walls.
There was something that had gotten vandalized, and you were touching it up.
Oh, I don't really remember that part. I was helping a lot of other, like me and some other artists sometimes would take like empty or semi-empty boards and sort of like work on it together. But there was nothing like super concrete that we were doing. We were just sort of messing around. But I mean, yeah, that's one of the great parts about the CHOP is anyone was welcome to come in. And, you know, we had a lot of like free art supplies. So anyone was welcome to come in, even if they didn't have art supplies, and just paint or draw or, you know, do whatever they wanted to do. So it was nice to have a place where you just, you know, there was like freedom of expression because there was no one there to police you on things you could or couldn't say.
What motivated you to go to CHOP in the first place?
Well, at the time I was living with my grandma, so I had to be very careful about my involvement and how many large groups of people I was around.
Sure.
So I remember watching on TV the cruiser being lit on fire with my grandma, and I felt like at that point that I had to start getting involved somehow, but I wanted to do it safely. So the next morning I woke up at 4 before the curfew, and then I just took my camera at 5 to downtown, and I just walked around photographing for like 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I was done with that, I was just walking back to my car and I was bawling my eyes out. And then every morning after that, I started showing up, photographing in the early morning when there was no one around. I met a lot of protesters that way, actually, and a lot of friends that I still talk to today. And then, from there, I started bringing coffee because everyone was always exhausted. And then there was a police line before the chop. And then, I started meeting more and more people. And then at one point, I met an artist who was like, hey, like, come paint in the chop. We have all these barricades now. And so then I ended up painting in the chop. So it was sort of like a progression, right? Of, starting from photographing to like free coffee for protesters to painting in the chop. And then I started helping out with the art co-op and art supplies. And then it just sort of exploded from there, honestly.
What your style is very distinct. The style of painting that you did of both George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. What was your inspiration for that?
Well, obviously,
beyond the obvious of the George Floyd, but more stylistically, what was your inspiration?
Well, I remember when I started painting George Floyd, that was actually on the summer solstice, I want to say. And so my idea for that was combining sort of, because usually on summer solstice, there would be the bike parade in Fremont. But because of COVID, we didn't have that. So I wanted to combine the summer solstice with George Floyd. So I printed out some like Woodstock era posters because I knew that I wanted to have font that said the sun never sets on George Floyd, but I didn't actually know how big these barricades would be. So I got a font that was sort of stretchable that I could sort of stretch or contract, and it'd be pretty easy to do. And so I used this sort of Woodstock poster font that said the sun never set on, and then I had yellow for the background that faded to white around George Floyd. So for that, it was definitely the summer solstice coinciding with the chop beginning and with like the sort of George Floyd uprising all together. And then, for the Breonna Taylor one, it was, I was there. You got the sense like the first half of chop, there was like thousands of people coming through each day.
Yeah.
But then the last week or so, the amount of people that were there was down to a steady trickle. Like we had barely hundreds instead of thousands. And so I knew with the Breonna Taylor one, it sort of felt like there was a clock that was ticking and time was running out. And so I sort of tried to, I wanted to paint Breonna Taylor, but I also knew that most likely the chop would be raided soon. So I was painting right up until maybe about 7 hours before the chop was raided. Like I remember taking one last picture, like maybe at around 10 or 11 the night before the chop was raided. And that was the last time that I, ever saw the chop and was in the chop. So
that video clip that we ran a little while ago, I know that was shot at about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I remember that because the announcement for closure was at 2, and we were walking around. There were a bunch of us that were walking around documenting things at that point, because we knew it was coming. We just didn't know when it was coming. I know I've spoken to you about this. I was in awe of you sitting there and painting, and in that moment on the 30th, there were very few people around, which is what we were showing in that. And I saw it as this beautiful act of almost defiance. Everyone knows the clock is running out, and you were almost in this Zen-like state, just painting away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is I think a lot of us know, and one thing I did learn about um, the movement at that point is a lot of local names, right? Because at that during the protests, you heard a lot of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and then if you're in Seattle, you probably know the names of John T. Williams, Charlena Lyles, Manuel Ellis, Sean Furr,
Tommy Lay.
yeah, Tommy Lay, exactly, Donnie Chin. And the thing is a lot of people aren't aware of their local history. Like, they've heard about the bigger names because they're on the local news, and you hear people across the country and across the world like chanting these names. But there's names like Jesse Sarey that just don't get heard. And so, we want to continue to shine light on, getting justice for everybody, because there are a lot of people that have been murdered by the police. And there's just so many names, and there's more every day. And, that's why a lot of us are here. And I like to say, like, my camera and my paintbrush is my weapon, because that's the way that I can express how I feel and share it with the rest of the world. So as long as that message continues to spread, like, I'm perfectly happy, because that's my goal.
Well, something you can't see, our comments are blowing up with support for Jesse Sarey right now after you said his name. And I know that that's something that you can't see where you're out on the remote camera.
Yeah.
This is all right. SPD comes in July 1st. The other part of the story I think that's important is starting around the 27th of June, Seattle agreed to start allowing the artwork to get packed. They brought in a couple of metal kind of large storage boxes to protect them. And most of the artwork by June 30, a lot of it was packed up at that point. A lot of those boards, other people had pulled it out. The city of Seattle, part of their commitment was they're going to have a place for the artwork. They're going to protect the artwork. This was part of the promises from last year. And that's the other side of the story. This has all kind of gone off the rails, hasn't it?
Yeah, just a little. Oh, I mean, it's been a crazy ride, David. Like, the first time I was ever arrested was the day the CHOP was raided. And me and Brian were trying to prevent the art from being taken out of the CHOP. And, keep in mind, like, we definitely had our part in that, but we were trying to protect the art from those who were, coming up in white vans, snatching the art, and then it was never seen again. And there was a lot of that happening. There was a lot of, like, looting and snatching, and selling. Yeah, absolutely. And you might have noticed a few months ago, there was actually some CHOP art that was on eBay, that somebody was trying.
I didn't know this. Tell us about this. I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah. So during the CHOP, there were a lot of people who were walking off with a lot of the loose CHOP artwork because, there was signs up on the East Precinct. There was the CHOP barricades. And so, at that point, when everything was in flux, and we got arrested, standing in front of that SDOT truck, we had no idea where it was going or what was going to happen to it. And as far as we knew, it was disappearing forever. And so what ended up happening is that art was in giant SDOT containers, and it was taken over to SODO at the SDOT facility. And after I got arrested, I actually went over to that facility, and it had 10 or 15-foot high fences with barbed wire, and you could only access those containers if you were an SDOT official. And so I was like, well, the art is literally taken by the city. And so we had these meetings with the Office of Art and Culture where they said, we're going to help you facilitate the artwork to be returned to the community. And so we sort of, the Office of Arts and Culture was very kind in helping us get those containers transferred to King Street Station, where a number of people started cataloging and indexing and photographing the art, myself included. Yeah. And at that point, we figured the safest way to protect the art was to create a nonprofit structure to help protect it. And so Brian Seamus filed the CHOP art paperwork with Washington State, and we formed this sort of loose group. And, then it started to go downhill from there.
Well, it's descended now into lawsuits, and I know you can't talk too much about it, but maybe can you give us the high level at where things are at and what's going on with that?
Yeah. So it sort of started dissolving where I ended up having to get a restraining order against Brian, and a community member offered to pay for the storage of the artwork, to pay for it, because at that point we didn't have the funds to pay for it ourselves. And so what ended up happening is the leader of the group, I informed him that this other member was stalking and harassing me and all of the stuff that was going on. And they decided to protect them and keep them in the group. And so I'm dealing with this and still trying to manage and help the artwork and photograph it. And at that point, we were doing chop ups where I was providing mutual aid to the houseless in Cal. And I'd also display the artwork, and I was managing the social media, and I was the treasurer. And I was still trying to deal with, this other member of the group harassing me. So I ended up getting a restraining order. And then, the day after the Mohai event that we had in January, they decided to kick me out of the group. And so they didn't realize at this point that the community member who had paid for storage changed the locks. I didn't realize either, because they had a key, I had a key, and Mark Anthony had a key. I only found out after the fact. And my reaction was, the art is safe. It's fine if I don't have a key, because I know it's safe. And their reaction was, we don't have a key. We need to break into this storage unit and steal all of the art back. And so luckily my friend ended up catching them. And then, the art ended up in my possession. And so at that point, they decided to sue me for the entirety of the chop art collection. So that's where the lawsuit is coming from, essentially, is it's unfortunate, because I feel like if there wasn't so much harassment and there wasn't so much infighting, we might have been able to move forward. But because of everything that happened, now they are suing the only artist in the group because they want the whole chop art collection back. So, it's just really unfortunate, I think, because the collection belongs to the community. It belongs to the artist who created it. And so
absolutely,
no one person owns the art. No matter what people claim, it belongs to the community. It belongs to, the Black community. It belongs to the chop artists. It belongs to all of the people who were literally tear gassed and flashbanged and maced by SPD to fight for the chop. So the fact that any one person who can come in and say, this art belongs to me, that's just pure ego.
No, I completely agree with that. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to mess with that, because I was actually going to pull Jennifer in on the camera, but I'm like, it's all going so smooth.
Let's not do that.
I'm just saying, let's not do that. So we need to wrap up. I really appreciate you coming.
Yes.
What do you want? And what can the community do, or can the community do anything at this point to help?
At this point, I've sort of taken the burden of caring for it on myself. But it's always great to get volunteers, because I do a lot of mutual aid. And for those of you who don't know what mutual aid is, it means essentially organizing, collecting clothes and toiletries and food and art supplies, and distributing them back out to the community. So if anyone is in the Seattle area, I'm always looking for volunteers. I'm always looking for donations. I no longer take cash. I only take supplies because of, there's been a lot of rumors that have been thrown at me, and I just don't want to deal with that anymore. So if they're in the Seattle area, showing up in person or donating items is always really appreciated. As for the chop art, I've been paying to store it. I've been returning the art to the artists because ever since February, not a single piece of art was returned to the artist, including myself. So I've been trying to return the art to the artists. So if you know any chop artists, get them in contact with me and I can return their artwork to them. And then, I've been trying to take care of the mold. So, because there are a lot of wheat paste flyers in there, there was mold that started to grow on them from last summer and also rust from the SDOT container. So I've been trying to mitigate the mold situation and, pulling in like friends who work in the art field to help me care for it. So, I mean, that's, I'm happy to help take care of the chop art, but if anyone wants to help me with mutual aid or other activities like that, I'm always happy to take volunteers or supplies.
And go ahead and contact us through, if you want to. Actually, I don't know if we have pop-ups on this. Oh, we do. All right. You can contact us at tips@malcontentment.com and just say, I want to help, and we will relay that to you. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for the history lesson and telling us where things are at. Is there any, and we're going to talk a little bit about the permits getting pulled. We're going to unpack on that. Yeah. Is there any plan for any exhibition in the future, or is there anything on exhibit right now? I know there was an exhibit at least earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now there is currently an exhibition going on. It's called Injustice Murals. And it was curated by this amazing UW museology grad who just graduated, actually. And it's over at the Bellevue Art Museum. And it currently has murals from COVID and then some chop art as well. And Stephanie Morales is one of the other chop artists and is also like a working artist as well. She's super amazing. You should check her work out. Her art business goes by AXSM, and her name is Stephanie Morales. I go by SS Art or Sakura Schlegel Art. And then my George Floyd and Breonna Taylor pieces are also in that exhibition. So you can actually see that until, I believe, July 18th. It's on the first floor of the Bellevue Arts Museum, right? Because we want to continue spreading that message. We want to continue, showing the people that need to hear it the most, right? Because Bellevue, the East Side, definitely needs to get that message too. So you can go and see that exhibition, and I'm always happy to chat. And then you can always, send people my information as well if they would like to chat to me.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show, and thank you so much for this. It's really appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. It's been really awesome to talk to you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and I know we'll be talking more.
Yes, absolutely. Keep me updated.
I will, and you too. Wow, Jennifer, I learned a lot.
Yeah, that sounds really intense. But I mean, like,
it sounds very capitalistic.
Yeah, seize the means of perfection, people.
It sounds so...
It's super capitalistic, but this is not uncommon, Like, I mean, for the longest time, if you looked at people of color making art and even like indigenous peoples, there was such a huge market for indigenous art that they basically just went and stole it and then put it into museums. And it wasn't until like 94 with NAGPRA that at least indigenous people within the United States had an opportunity to reclaim it.
Yes, and hearing about stuff being stolen, stuff being sold on eBay.
Yeah.
This is heartbreaking for me. On Tuesday, there was supposed to be chop art on this weekend. And on Tuesday, the city of Seattle, I don't know if revoked is the right words, but they pulled the permits, so they refused to issue the permits. And so that's not going to happen. Mark Anthony's the organizer. He attempted to rebrand this as a Juneteenth event. The city claims they didn't have enough time to review the permit requests, and that there was community backlash on commemorating CHOP at all. The event has been removed because there was a flyer on the story that was on the Capitol Hill News blog that pointed to the website chop.art, and there is no mention of this event now on the chop.art website. We will be talking to Mark Anthony,
of course,
and we just were not able to connect with him before airtime. And full disclosure, that's on me. That's not on Mark. Things are a little busy. Hey, Malcontents, let us know in the comments, what do you think about the live interview format here? Because we're going to be doing a whole lot more of it. So if you don't like it, too bad. No, I'm just kidding. We definitely want to know what you think. And you heard, if you want to see CHOP art, it's at the Bellevue Art Museum. You can see it through July 18th over at BAM. I like how we did that in stereo.
Yes.
All right, we're going to do a little pause for the cause, and we're going to go into our next segment of the show. All right, there we go. We were having a side conversation.
It's because David just wouldn't turn on the light switch. I'm not even sure what he was trying to do. Like, what's the end game there?
I don't know what the end game was there. I have no clue. Whatever on that. This is the part of the show, too, where we're going to tell you, go ahead and spam those hearts. Spam those hearts. Go ahead and mess with those algorithms on Facebook and YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter. Make them think that there's actually worthwhile content to watch over here. If you're on Twitch, you can go ahead and you can use our emotes, including Yoda. Yoda's over there. I know people are like, when we did the test feed, were like, you got to find a spot for Yoda. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And if you're over on YouTube, we love you, YouTube, but you don't get anything cool over there. So I don't know what to tell you. All you can do is YouTube is just love you mods, love you admins, love you editors, love you Jennifer David, just not in a creepy way. We are aware that Jennifer is slightly out of focus.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it happened on the camera, on this center camera, about 5 minutes before it went airtime. We were both like, are you soft focus? What happened? Yes, I wiped the lens down. Yes, I tried checking the cables. We will work it out tomorrow. We were just like, we're rolling. We're living with it. We're rolling.
We're going with it.
Believe me, if we just pulled off a live interview.
We're in the same room.
And we're in the same room. And so far, knock on, that is real wood, by the way. Knock on wood. There hasn't been a mute button disaster yet. All right. And with that, we're going to go to our next story.
Watch.
This was a terrible. We've already concluded this was a terrible idea. That was also the inside of Jenny Durkin's cell phone.
Yeah.
The problem is the control board's over here. We're like, fine, let's switch. And then Jennifer's looking at 45 buttons in front of her going, I don't know how any of this works.
They're pretty.
That's why I was like, okay, this just officially became a bad idea. David is a lefty. Yes.
I'm also more brightly lit than you. Yeah, like it's raining down light on me at the moment. Mm-hmm.
There, is that better?
I don't know. It's like the light's over here. This one is.
I know, but that's the light that points at you. That light points at me. There, is that better? Actually, I think it is a little better. Is that better? I think it's better. You're still sitting pretty far back from the...
I know. It's because my legs are crossed.
Look, again, if this is the sum total of our problems tonight, first time we're in the room together.
Look
Only been doing this
now.
for 7 months.
I'm trying, people.
All right. We already rolled up the intro there for the York statue. Jennifer, take it away. Save us, Jennifer.
Please don't zoom in on me right now.
I was going to zoom in on you right now.
No. I can't handle that at the moment. So yeah, there was a statue of York that appeared in Mount Tabor. Like nobody knows how it got there. And it just appeared in February and actually replaced Clark Harvey, who was a conservative, not so nice chud. Do you want to press the chud button?
We can do the chud button.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
So he replaced this chud, and he's been there. And if a little backstory on York, he was an enslaved man that belonged to Clark on the Lewis and Clark expedition. And so in the, I believe, 1990s during the Clinton administration, he and Sacagawea were actually awarded Medals of Honor. And so then they did a commemorative bust of him for, I think it was the inaugural or like the 100-year celebration, 200-year celebration. But we don't know how this one ended up in particular in Mount Tabor. And then this woman came and decided to do some really bizarre art on it.
Well, art's being really generous.
Yeah, we think she's a Prince fan. We're not sure.
We're gonna roll a clip. Some people may find this offensive. It doesn't deserve like the full warning, but some people may find some of her comments and actions offensive.
Okay.
Do you want to give us your name on the?
Yeah, my name is Jeanette K. Grody. My date of birth is 9/13/78.
Hey, way to be part of the solution. Good job.
Come fucking arrest me.
Good job.
I'm first, not color, race, or sex.
What's your name?
It's 9/70. My name is Jeanette Grody. Report me to the police. I will pay for damages if you want me to. Fuck all of you. I've been prejudiced against black people and Hispanic people, and everybody has. I'm sure you've been prejudiced against people as well. I don't give a fuck. Do whatever the fuck you want.
All right.
It's love and unity, not to replace a white man with a fucking black man. That is not fucking unity. Yeah, you can go ahead, shake your head. I've read the white privilege book or whatever the fuck else you want for Unity Spiritual Center. I don't give a fuck.
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
She's lovely, huh?
I wonder if she's single.
Oh, no, you know she's married to a guy named like Bubba that drives a very large truck.
I do not approve the use of the purple paint at all. This was misuse and appropriation of Malcontentment purple.
Yes. As a Husky, I agree.
She had a lot to say in those 50 seconds of video clips, and a lot of it didn't. Yeah, exactly. Like,
why are you so pissed that they put a statue of York there and replaced a white man? Like, what is the big deal? I don't get it. Is it? Yeah. And she was so angry. She's like breathing heavy and all upset. And I'm like, why are you so worked up? Were you like distant relatives? Like, what is the deal?
Yeah. And she openly admits, I don't like black people. Yeah, I'm prejudiced.
Don't like Hispanic people.
Don't like Hispanic. Like, yeah, got to throw that. It's like, well, okay. What does that got to do with York? I don't.
And what's the purple? And the female symbol. Like, what was up with that?
I just, none of it makes sense, but clearly has some issues. Not aware, at least at airtime, that there's been any arrest or married to some Chad. Chad and Karen, I just...
Hallelujah! Holy shit! Where's the
Thank you,
Tylenol?
Dragon 213.
You're really liking that you can see all the comments, because you really haven't been able to see the comments up to this point.
Trying to frame it on feminists. Yes, yes. That's good.
That's good.
Mhm.
That's good. That's
Doesn't
an
really
interesting.
fit the
That's an
feminist
interesting take
agenda,
on it.
but okay.
All right. So, all seriousness aside, this teeters on a hate crime because
Oh,
of what she said. Because of what she says.
Absolutely.
I haven't really seen anything coming out of Portland or from the. Is Mount Tabor a state park or is it a local park? Or
I don't know. I would have to look it up.
someone light it up in the comments. Is Mount Tabor, is that a
Help us
state
out.
park or a local park? Help us out with that. I would presume if it's a state park, charges then would probably come from the state police, not right. If it's a local park, it would come from Portland. I would
Yes.
presume. I'm not aware of any charges. I'm not aware of any investigation, but I am aware of a whole lot of outrage. And York's story is kind of awful.
York's story is awful. After the expedition, Clark said for a long time that he offered York his freedom, but that York was so attached to him because York had actually been passed down. Thank you, David. Passed down by Clark's father to him upon his death. And so nobody really knows the entirety of what happened, but they think that York actually was not granted freedom. There was not even an offer of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Of what the little bit I read, I know this is your story, but read it probably. My understanding is that during the not exhibit. Why am I saying the expedition? During the, I almost said excursion. During the expedition.
The excursion?
The excursion. Yes, during their trot from St. Louis, just, there's no roads or anything, but we're going to go for a trip. During their expedition.
So tiny.
She looks the same size as me. What are you talking about?
I'm like 128 pounds. I'm not tiny.
So, okay, we got to focus. You're just amused by the comments here. But my understanding of what I read was he was essentially treated as a free person during the time of in the sense that, all right, you can go out hunting with them. You can go do whatever, it was kind of like, hey, you can go do what you want. As much as a slave could be treated as a free person. And part of what I read was that this transition back, that he had asked for his freedom when they got back, and he was told, no.
I mean, there's a lot of theories around what potentially happened, but they think that, he was never actually granted his freedom. And I mean, in reality, they needed him. There was actually not that many people on the expedition. And so they needed his labor, his hunting skills to help them survive because they had some very rough times during the journey.
Absolutely.
Very, very rough times. But the part that gets me the most is when they're getting ready to head back home and they're stopped on the Columbia River and they're trying to decide which side of the river they're going to camp on for the winter until they can go home. And historians actually argued for some time that the vote that was made that included Sacagawea and York actually was the first vote cast by a woman and an enslaved black man. But I mean, if we think about that realistically, David, is that true? Because neither one of them were actually free. Sacagawea was actually a Shoshone captive by the Hidatsa Mandan, and then York was an enslaved man. So that doesn't feel very much like democracy to me. And I teach this in my Pacific Northwest history class and in my 1800s class. It doesn't really, give off the right vibe to my students either. They're like, that doesn't sound like democracy to us either.
Nope, and it doesn't sound like democracy to me either.
Yes.
We will monitor this story. We'll see if there's be any charge. She was bold with giving her full name, and
I love the comments. I love that I can see the comments. Rex 206, yes. Thomas Jefferson's slave mistress, her name was Sally Hemings. They had multiple children. Yeah, I could go on that for like an hour, but I won't.
Yes, and the Wikipedia entry for York is very short, and the stub for the statue, although at least there is a stub for the statue, is even shorter with that. We will follow the story.
Renee. What happens? Okay.
Yeah, we will follow the story. We'll see what happens if any charges come from this. She was very bold, and this is my name, this is my date of birth, and my identity has probably already been stolen by people all around the world at this point.
Oh, God, who would want it? Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a little pause for the cause, and then we're going to go to our next segment.
He can be heard on the video saying, "I can't breathe."
It is so hard to watch this. It goes for about 10 minutes.
You ain't doing nothing now. Put him in the car.
We're not going without. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
Tear gas down the hill.
There is huge group of people running. All right, those are flashbang grenades. SPD is actively pushing the people into the line of fire.
The response seemed too quick to escalate, and too quick to deploy flashbangs, pepper spray.
We're not going to evacuate or abandon the East Precinct.
They put in some water-filled barriers that have basically all already been moved. Seattle police abandoned the East Precinct, and for about an hour, no one knew what to expect.
That's the reason you will not catch me saying abolish police or defunding 100%. Not because I don't believe in it, but because I know what it will take to win it. Winning 50% defund is going to be goddamn hard.
And SPD is gone. And I stood here on Monday contemplating what did this strip of road up here symbolize.
I'm not a leader. I'm just a black person that's tired of going through shit. I don't want to be the leader. I don't want to be none of that.
George Floyd, say his name. George Floyd, say his name. George Floyd.
I know you're tired, but the time is today. The time is right now.
It's up to the citizens of the city of Seattle to hold the politicians accountable. So if there's no accountability, I don't think there'll be change.
On I-5, people were hit on the freeway?
Jenny Durkin. Jay Inslee.
Can you hear us?
When I say power to the people, you say all power to the people. Power to the people.
Can You Hear Us is our documentary about what happened during the CHOP era. It covers the events from May 30th to July 4th here in Seattle. It more broadly covers the events of the United States that happened from May 25 until July 4. It is available now. It is showing on YouTube on demand. You can literally go onto YouTube and type in, "Can You Hear Us?" It is coming up as the second or third item. And Jennifer, it's moving up in the ranks. If you do type in BLM documentary, we are on the first page now.
Wow.
And moving up because of the eyeballs that are watching it and the positive feedback that it is getting. It was a huge labor of love. We are not switching seats again because she can't work the control board. All right, we're going to story number 3. Y'all are killing us.
I did want to say.
We were muted. All right, our next story takes us right here to Seattle, and we're going to have Renee, We have the whole crew tonight.
Yeah.
I know. We're going to have Renee, although Renee not in the studio. And we have Brianna Thomas. Brianna Thomas is running for Seattle City Council.
Yep.
She's running against Nikita Oliver for the 9th seat. And Renee did an interview with her. It's a 2-part interview. If y'all are going, oh my God, it's almost 9 o'clock. Actually, it's pretty short. It's about 15, 16 minutes total. We broke it up into 2 segments, so that way it's digestible. So you're going to get 2 little meals and an amuse-en-bouche at the end. And I think what we'll just do is we're going to go ahead and play the first section. Just as with before, you'll be able to see your comments. We have set it up that you'll be able to see there.
Production.
Seize the seat of production. Guys, you're killing us. And with that, I'm loving, like, you all are so more engaged, and I'm loving this. And with that, let's go ahead and roll the clip because we're never going to get this show done.
Thank you so much for having me. As a dedicated public servant and a young woman who grew up in Hepzibah, Georgia in a trailer park, I assure you, I am almost as surprised as you are that I'm here.
Seattle is facing an ongoing crisis related to unhomed peoples. Washington State experienced a 6.2% increase in homelessness during 2019-2020. King County spends over $1 billion per year in public and private investment to support approximately 12,500 houseless people, with disappointing results. If you are elected to the Seattle City Council, how would you work to address this crisis?
Thank you so much for the question. I think it's a 3-part approach. You got a short-term, medium, long-term approach, right? Short-term, we got to get people inside. I'm impressed with some of the results we're seeing around the hoteling programs and the partnership with the county there. So we learned a lot during the COVID crisis about non-congregate shelter and a different methodology and getting folks inside, including the hotels. But we also have to expand our low and no barrier shelter because we all know that abstinence doesn't work, and that shouldn't be a requirement for recovery and stabilization. So let's get people inside. In the meanwhile, let's make sure we've got a workforce of service providers that don't qualify for the services that they are bringing to the table. They need to have livable wages. They need to have access to workforce housing. They also need to be supported and stabilized. And long term, we just got to build more housing. And I think that's incumbent upon the city to meaningfully invest in. We can't just rely on, high road developers to bring us those 3 and 4 bedrooms that we know real families need near their workplaces. We've got to make sure that our housing stock reflects the diversity of needs that we have in this community. And, my kingdom to not see another tower go up with a bunch of glamorized one bedrooms.
Absolutely. As a result of the ongoing COVID pandemic, economic recovery and development and addressing Seattle's crumbling transit infrastructure, such as the West Seattle Bridge, are of great importance. Additionally, some express concern that jobs have left the downtown core and could have left Seattle permanently, and workers will not return. The question then is threefold. How would you tackle the infrastructure issue? How would you stimulate the economic recovery and development? And what concerns do you have about the loss of employers and workers in Seattle?
Yeah, excellent question. I also live on the island of West Seattle, so nobody wants that bridge fixed more than me. But we also have bridges in Magnolia, in the U District, all over the city that need to be improved so they don't fall into the sound. And we can do that through apprenticeships and relationships with our union partners for an economic boost and engine. That way, as we build infrastructure and leverage federal dollars, this is how we got out of the Great Depression. That's how we're going to get out of this economic downturn. In terms of business development in the downtown core, the way we use land now is based on a 10,000 square foot model for somebody who is more of a national retailer coming in. Nobody's going from their house or their garage or their Etsy shop to 10,000 square feet overnight. So let's shrink those blueprints. Let's make them 2,500 square feet. So smaller businesses can actually afford the rent. They can create good jobs for workers. And then we use the leftover space in any of these developments to provide childcare. We know the city of Seattle has a real dearth of childcare and it's egregiously expensive. So as we work to build a 15-minute neighborhood, that means everybody's got what they need right there in their neighborhood. That's economic opportunity. And that's somewhere to make sure that you can get groceries, put your kids and hang out with your seniors. In terms of folks coming back to work, I think we want to. Humans are social creatures, and it's going to be a little bit awkward. I don't know about you, but making eye contact has been weird lately. But I think we want to be together, and I think the revitalization of downtown and our neighborhood centers of commerce will help with the issues that we've seen around the city having a reputation for not being very well kept. I think once we all get back in the groove of being together, we'll get back in the groove of taking care of each other.
As a result of the protests related to the murder of George Floyd, police violence, and ongoing racial inequality, Seattle has earned a national reputation as a crime-ridden, dirty, and unsafe city. At one point, the city was even labeled by the previous president as an anarchist jurisdiction. Do you agree with this view? And if so, or if not, how do you shift the perceptions of our city?
We are not an anarchist jurisdiction, but thank you for the question. I was quite complimented by that. Seattle has a history of protest, and that's well within our rights, and it's well within our culture. And if you can't go to Westlake and put your fist in the air and be pissed about something 3 times a year, we're not doing it right. But I don't think that protest against injustice equals destruction. I think there were a handful of folks who decided that dumpster fires were the thing for them that year. And to them, I'd like to speak directly to their parents right now. Please come get your children. Please get them. You're embarrassing us. Everyone can see it. But I think that what was most disappointing about that was that violence was then coupled with the movement for Black liberation, implying that it is a violent movement, and nothing could be further from the truth. The liberation of Black lives is not an assault, although it appeared to be so on our city for 63 days because a handful of bad actors wanted to steal a narrative. So let's not buy into that. That's not who we are.
And how do you address racial inequality within Seattle?
You have hard conversations with the 87% of the city that's white, and you sit in the discomfort and you don't shift the burden onto people of color, because I assure you we are plenty burdened. The people who are operating in the space of privilege, it's incumbent upon them to educate themselves on how we got here and what being an ally looks like moving forward. TLDR, you can't call yourself an ally. Somebody else has to give you that cool point. But it's more than book groups, it's action. It's what happens at work when you see that a woman of color is being spoken over. It's what happens when you see that a trans person isn't getting the same opportunities for advancement. It's each of us individually stepping up to the plate day by day. And it's incumbent on policymakers to bring folks to the table to make sure we are using an intersectional lens on all the policies that we build, so people who have been most harmed by government violence are centered in conversations moving forward.
Almost had a mute disaster.
I was totally
I know we're both like, oh, wait a minute, the first half is over.
Yeah.
We're running over. We're having fun. I think it's part of the reason why we're running over. And we had a great live interview. And so this is what we're going to do. We're not going to do our unpack for the first. We'll save it to the end. Brief pause for the cause. You know what the pause for the cause is. You know what's coming next.
My favorite.
And you want it. And you want it. And you know it. And that's what's coming up next. And then we're going to do the second part.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
Black Coffee Northwest is located in Shoreline, Washington. You take I-5, you get off at exit 176, which is the 175th exit. Don't get confused. Head south on 99 just for a couple of blocks. They're on the west side of the highway. They have amazing merch. They have amazing coffee. And Jennifer, they have potato scones. Potato scones, if you don't know what that is, you never watched the show before. By the way, we picked up a ton of new followers on the show tonight. I was seeing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, new followers. So appreciated.
We appreciate you.
We do, big time.
I can't do a heart.
We have a button that you just hit the button. You hit there you go. There's the button. Anyway, they have potato scones. Potato scones are like the fluffiest, most amazing scone, because I don't like dry scones. So they're not dry. It's like this fluffy, amazing scone and a baked potato with cheese and onion had a baby. And this is its offspring. And it's just delicious. And the other thing I love there is Mexican mocha. But as I always say, I don't recommend the potato scone and the Mexican mocha together.
Potato scone.
It doesn't work.
Mexican mocha.
And merch.
And merch. It's the black coffee.
Get your merch. Focus. There it is. Focus on
hat trick. The black coffee hat trick.
You need merch. And Jennifer's going to get her merch, although probably won't have it until next week.
Mm-hmm.
Unless somebody wants to drive to Shoreline for me and then bring it back to Kirkland tomorrow. Which, no, you really don't have to do that. Jennifer, let's go to the second part of that and then of this interview with Breonna Thomas.
Okay.
And then we'll be able to unpack.
Compared to other West Coast cities such as Portland, San Francisco, San Jose, Sacramento, Oakland, and San Diego, Seattle has the second highest cost per police officer, tied with Oakland, and the second highest officer per capita behind San Francisco. Additionally, the average officer makes $1,503,000 a year before benefits, according to the Seattle Times. Despite this large force and supporting budget, Seattle police report slow response times and claim the issue to be lack of staff. The police budget was cut approximately 18%, and staffing levels were adjusted to support roughly 1,325 officers, if fully staffed. How would you defund the police? What is your position on that? And as a city council member, what would you do to restore the trust in the SPD?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think I define defund the police as a call from community to right-size budget investments in systems that actually produce public safety. We know that public safety for particularly the trans community is not the same as a rainbow sticker on a cupcake shop. That's not it. It's actually having relationships that don't end in more violence for people that are already experiencing trauma and are already vulnerable. So when I hear defund the police, I also hear invest in community solutions. We have to do that in a way that has a 1, 3, 5, and 10-year plan, because the last thing we need is to lose this political moment to a pilot project that is underfunded on the community side and then doesn't produce the results that people are looking for, so we can wash our hands, say that we tried it, and continue with business as usual. I think where I stand personally on defund is I hear the calls from community, but I don't think that doesn't necessarily mean less officers. It means better trained officers. It means culturally responsive officers. And quite frankly, it means SPOG coming to the table to get a contract that allows the reflection of communities' expectations and values in that document. So until we get someone that's willing to effectuate all of the changes we put in the 2017 Police Accountability Ordinance, because not all of them got in there, particularly arbitration and discipline, then we aren't going to be able to move culture forward in a way that is actually responsive to the calls of community.
And one of the many things COVID has shed light on is the ongoing mental health crisis in this country. Seattle is not exempt from this. Recently, a man in the throes of a mental health crisis was fatally wounded by the Seattle Police Department near the Seattle waterfront. Some cities have implemented programs where unarmed teams and social workers respond to these mental health calls. What would you do as a city council member to address the ongoing mental health crisis?
Yeah, I just had a Facebook interview with Senator Manka Dhingra, who is an expert on this topic. Wish she was here to answer this for me from Rolling Top. But the state's made some great investments this year in alternative responses. So we're looking forward to, instead of having to call 911, being able to call 688 for the appropriate responder to show up when somebody's experiencing a crisis. And that responder should be someone ideally who also has a shared lived experience with the person that they're responding to. We also need to make sure that our 911 operators are being trained in a way that they are giving the correct information to whoever's responding, whether it is SPD or Health One or a community-based provider, so that their bias doesn't enter the conversation, so that the information that our responders are getting doesn't lead them to a particular outcome or a series of assumptions. I think it all starts at the point of impact and engagement.
Housing affordability is a significant problem here in Seattle. 88% of Seattle's land zoned for housing is zoned for single-family units. Over the last 5 years, most of the new construction has been centered in the 12% that supports high-density housing. Developers and builders focus on small footprint properties with minimal parking and luxury appointments. How do you support changing our zoning rules for ADUs and more dense construction to alleviate the housing crisis? And what changes does Seattle regulations need to make so that construction of residential property, what would you support as far as construction of residential property, basically?
No more towers with marble countertops and studios. We don't need any more of those. We're super good. And density doesn't have to be terrifying. It can be a duplex. It can be a triplex. It can be a detached infill unit on somebody else's already single family plot so that, the doddering auntie who never got married has someone to age in place, has somewhere to age in place with some dignity. I think we have to recognize our history of redlining and we have to recognize our attitudes for the last 20, 30 years around not in my backyard. It is now in your backyard and it's in your parks and it's on your streets. And that is part of what is exacerbating the homelessness crisis that we are facing right now. And so we got to get real about the fact that density can look like a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be terrifying, but we can't allow our nostalgia for a Seattle that actually never was to overtake the real needs we have on the ground right now. And there's a lot of ways to do it. It doesn't have to be scary.
Seattle does have a reputation of having high taxes compared to other Washington cities. A number of initiatives have addressed incremental taxes to fund transit, houseless programs, education, and the general fund. These taxes are small on paper, such as the 2020 STBD Property One voters approved that it added 0.5% to the city's existing sales tax. Most of these taxes are regressive due to Washington State's tax structure. Will you pledge no new taxes on the residents of Seattle?
No, I won't. But I will pledge to work my tookus off to figure out how to turn the regressive tax system around. And that may mean a new type of tax. But I absolutely agree that right now relying on sales tax, which disproportionately impacts the working poor, it is just not acceptable. We've got the most upside down tax structure in the country right now. So I think you will need a new tax structure to address that. But I'd just like to remind folks that the city has tried non-regressive options on several occasions. I personally have the emotional scar tissue from all 3 times we did the employee hours tax and the time we did the income tax, the discussions we've had around capital gains, which just passed at the state level. But really, one thing I've learned my 5 years working with the council is you have to pass a policy that 1 can be implemented, because if we don't feel it, nothing happened, and 2 will stand up to a legal challenge. Every time someone has a good idea that's in alignment with our community's values, we work a policy, we get it through, we work in collaboration, and then boom, lawsuit. If I've got a piece of legislation that's tied up in litigation and I can't actually implement it, again, nothing happened. So these policies have to be done collaboratively and they have to be done with an eye to surviving legal challenges, because at this point we have learned those are inevitable.
And what programs would you want to see cut if you're a member of the city council?
This is going to be hugely unpopular, but I think some of our commissions need restructuring. We got a lot of them. We got so many commissions, and I don't know if people are getting a meaningful experience from them. I don't know if 80 commissions is the answer. Maybe we take a look at it. Maybe we put some of them together, we align some of the mission and values, so that way they're properly staffed and commissioners actually have the support they need to meaningfully engage with council members, with the mayor, with their community. So I think that we could probably tighten that up. We got a little commission happy.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much. And I would be remiss if I didn't make a pitch for some of your democracy vouchers, because I was the campaign manager that brought you that program.
All right. So there's a story behind this, Jennifer, where Brianna did this interview and the audio was a train wreck and we had to redo it.
We've been there.
And it did nothing. It was a Zoom issue. It wasn't anything on our side. It was a Zoom issue in the cloud. So she actually did all that like in about 20 or 25 minutes.
Yeah.
So the one thing I will say, first of all, Brianna, thank you for your patience. We told you all. I believe you're watching. I saw something on Twitter, so I think you are watching us right now. And you are welcome to come back at any time because, we want to have fair time for everybody. You you have about 10 minutes left on your pitch, so we could have you come back. I love Tookus. I know that's a weird place to start, but the Jew inside of me was just, oh, she said Tookus.
Yeah, we were talking about that during the interview. Yeah, I really liked the talk about, in the context of race and having hard conversations with the majority white population in Seattle. My only kind of rebut to that is who's going to be having these conversations, and how do we ensure people are, taking this to heart? Are we doing town halls? Are we providing, supplementary reading material? How do we get this message out, and who is having these conversations and leading them?
Yeah, and I think this is a real valid question because you're not woke, Seattle. You're not woke, Seattle. You like to think you're woke. You're not woke.
No.
It's low-key racist in Seattle.
Sometimes not even low-key.
And yeah, it's just under the surface. So having those conversations, I think, is going to be a challenge. Another thing that jumped out at me, which I love the sentiment, about no more towers, no more stainless steel, marble, granite. And this is something in our question, right, that we tee up about most of the construction for the last 5 years prior to COVID was high density units, small footprint, 300, 500, 600 square foot. That costs $3,000 a month. And people don't want to live in these small units.
No.
And I don't know if people are going to want to return into these small units in the post-COVID era, because you have all these people reevaluating their life. I mean, I get it and I support it, but how do you make that happen in a free market economy? I think it's a valid question.
Yeah, no, I think that's tough. We're going to have to figure out something. I was talking with my brother the other day about even in Kent now, for a basic 3-bedroom house, you're looking at close to $900,000. And it's because so many people have been pushed out of Seattle that the housing market in these surrounding areas is just skyrocketing, and it's getting ridiculous. You can't find places to rent. You can't find houses that are affordable to buy. And so how are you going to, one, address the ongoing homeless crisis when there's not enough places for people to live already? Rent and housing is astronomical, because these all play into that. Gentrification, the rise of the tech industry, all of these things. So seize the means of production and capitalism.
We would not have a show if Jennifer did not seize the means of the production.
I'm trying to find a shirt.
It would be great to find a shirt. Another thing that jumps out at me is I've heard people say, oh, this is a bubble, this is a bubble, this is a bubble. And this doesn't seem like a bubble to me. And I think one of the key differences between 2006, 2007, and early 2008 and what we're seeing today is I put a house on the market, $1 million. We'll just say I'm asking $1 million.
Yeah.
It runs up to the winning is 1.25. Now, back in 2006, 2007, 2008, they would go find an appraiser, and that appraiser would make a bullshit appraisal that it's worth 1.25 million. And they would find a bank that's like, all right, we're not going to question this, whatever, because they're just getting rich off of writing the loans. They just want to write the loans. And that's not what's happening today. What's happening now is the house goes in the market for $1 million. It's selling for 1.25 million. And part of those conditions are, so you have the extra $250,000 cash because this place ain't appraising for more than $1 million. And if you don't, then we're taking your offer, because we got 15 other offers that came in. And if you don't have the cash, well, that's what we're doing with your offer. And this
Make it rain, David. Calm down.
This really illustrates the gap that has grown in COVID between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you were an Amazon worker, pre-COVID, stock was around $850, $950. If I'm wrong on that, someone blow me up in the comments. But I think it was around $850 or $950 a share. It's over $3,000 a share. So if you're 3 years at Amazon, which is tough, but if you sucked it up, Buttercup, and you made your 3 years, you got the $250,000 to put on top of that offer.
Please kill me. David will sweep the studio tomorrow morning. I'm not doing it.
Special effects budget for this show is big.
Hallelujah! Holy shit! Where's the Tylenol?
On the subject of Amazon, we can start segueing towards the end of the show. So now we know why Jeff is probably leaving as CEO of Amazon.
Just going to space.
He's going to space, and I'm willing to bet that there was something in his employment clause that, there's certain risky behavior that you cannot do as CEO. Because, if you blow up on the launch pad, it's going to have a negative material impact on the stock because capitalism.
What's the problem? Oh, I don't want to have this debate with you again, Evil Lynn. You're talking about cartoon evil, not real world evil, which is essentially a heightened narcissism.
Yeah, I think that about sums it up.
Mm-hmm. I'm back. Brought out Skeletor.
What's pretty scary? That's pretty scary. What's pretty scary?
Skeletor is not scary.
Oh, wait a minute. I live in a rural community south of Seattle. The housing market here has just shot up a price a lot. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people here that live just barely within their financial means. Yes, I mean, this is exactly it. And
absolutely.
What we're seeing right here in the neighborhood that I live in is there are homes that have been here 25, 30 years. They're close to paid off or they're paid off, but the property taxes have gone up so much that the people on fixed income are getting pushed out.
Yep.
And a lot of those homes in this area were built on 12,000, 16,000 square foot lots. So instead of subdividing that lot and putting, 2 homes or 3 homes that were of the similar size there, no. They put in a 4,500 square foot home that they're asking $2 million plus for.
Yeah.
This ugly bunker that you might have driven by. I mean, it looks like a bunker. It's I'm sorry if one of my neighbors is watching this, one of my new neighbors that moved into the new construction about a block and a half or 2 blocks from here. I'm sorry, but the house looks like friggin' government bunker. It's ugly. That place sold for over $2 million, and it's just ugly as shit. And there was a little rental house there. And the rental house was kind of falling apart, but it was on a nice big lot. And as that house was deteriorating, I was like, this is going to sell. One day this thing is going to sell, and they're going to put a big ass house there. And that's exactly what they did. And it's squeezing people further and further out. Federal Way is 14% black now.
Yeah. I know. And it's insane to me how much it costs to live in these places now. So yeah, and my brother is actually working on and working with someone to sell a house he's been remodeling for someone else, and it's in Kent, and so they don't want to sell it to somebody who's going to develop it because it's a beautiful old 19th century home. But the realtor said what they'll do is they'll send people in sometimes to live there for 5 or 6 months, so you get comfortable with the idea that somebody bought it for the original intent of the house, and then they'll wait and develop it. So they're really underhanded tactics to getting land.
There's a conversation in the community group that's here on how many people, we couldn't live here. My wife and I couldn't buy this house today, right? We bought this house in 2013. And there's no way we could buy this house today. It'd be out of the question.
Yeah.
Right. We would be living in Arlington or Monroe or
maybe
fringes of Everett or something like that. That's where we'd be at today if we had to buy. And this is really hurting first-time buyers.
First-time buyers and people who just are just being so far priced out of the area. But then when you're working in Seattle and then you're having to look at maybe 1.5, 2 hour commute to be able to afford to live somewhere, is it really even worth it to work? Because that commute, not only in the level of stress, but in the cost of gas and, wear and tear on your vehicle, it's difficult for people who are of low income or even moderate means to make it that way.
Number one way to build generational wealth in the American economy is land ownership, property ownership.
Yep.
And we are freezing out an entire generation. I mean, I know millennials have it tough. And I am not, and I know I bag on millennials a lot.
We're Gen
I haven't
X.
done it in a while. We're Gen X. Yeah. We love to, because I'll say it again. Millennials, boomers, we hate you equally. Gen X hates both of you equally. And because you don't even know we exist.
But we love Gen Z.
But we do love Gen Z. And I am not minimizing Gen X, you getting screwed. Gen Z getting screwed worse.
Absolutely.
And there is $2.5 trillion on the sidelines in the hands of institutional investors and private equity firms that are just waiting for the rental moratoriums and the foreclosure moratoriums to end. And this is why it's not a bubble, because they're just going to come in and buy these properties. They are not going to go back to bank possession, or if they go back to bank possession, they're going to get converted like that. Because we have a massive housing shortage in this country, which is why the price of housing is so expensive.
Yeah, no, and the thing about it is, too, we're facing like record numbers of evictions at the end of June if they don't do something to extend the moratorium further, because what's happening too is there's such a backup for rental assistance, it can't get to people and it can't get to landlords fast enough.
Exactly. So it's a serious problem. So I think Brianna Thomas said a lot of things. I want to be cautious if this felt like sound bites and high level policy. In her defense, it's not on her. It was a technology issue, which wasn't on us. It was just a Zoom thing, and she had to compress it down. We will definitely have her come back on more, and you can actually read more. I think we have probably a lot of readers among our audience. I like to believe that. There is more to the story. Renee is going to have her story in the Seattle Gay News. That'll be hitting newsstands on June 18th, and that will include a far more in-depth interview with Brianna Thomas.
Yay, so pick that up. Make sure you get that.
So the last thing I want to close on, Jennifer, is we are very, very aware of... And no, that was not the inside of Jenny Durkin's cell phone.
No?
But really, on the issue, when I say technical difficulty, I say it because, believe me, I think the mods and admins before we went on the air were probably breathing into paper bags. I know I was ready to breathe into a paper bag about 15 minutes before airtime, because it's just like, again, you don't see that side and how much equipment is on this side and how many
staring at
things
me in the face.
How many things could break or fail or that didn't work right. So we have seen the comments. We know about the focus issue on that side of the camera. I'll probably just put a different camera in. That's all I'm just going to do. We'll try to address it for tomorrow. It'll be addressed by Monday at the latest. We saw the thing.
We're not doing a show Monday.
Oh, that's right. It won't be Monday. That's right. No show on Monday. I am off the grid all day Monday, so that's why we're not doing a show. We're aware about the names not showing up in the comments. I'll look into it. I'm not going to probably turn myself inside out to fix that for tomorrow. We're definitely going to look at the thing. And we may try it standing up and see how it goes. We're sitting.
I'm really fidgety sitting for this long.
So we may try it standing up and see how that works. And if that doesn't work, we'll figure something out.
Look at that. Glitch free. Not even one mute.
Yes. Well, and the reason, because I have a whole desk. We have a desk. There's a whole desk here.
Yes.
We have room. So it doesn't matter if this is in my left hand or my right hand. I wasn't lying to you guys when I was saying the mute issues is when this was left-handed over the buttons. The buttons are just staring me right in the face. The comments are just staring me right in the face. I know I love being able to read all your comments. I love your... Well, that's good because we're both fidgeters. Like, there's no friggin...
All over the place.
Hallelujah!
God, I hope children aren't watching this, David.
Where's the Tylenol?
This is not a show for impressionable youth.
No.
All right, Malcontents. That's it. We will do it again tomorrow. We have Lance Randall tomorrow. And Lance Randall will have the distinction
Sorry, I'm 12.
Go
to bed.
Past your bedtime, Missy. Lance Randall will have the distinction of, he probably will be our last, because it doesn't look like we're going to get Casey Six Killer.
Nope.
Sorry. So Lance Randall will probably be the last of the front runners that will go through. And Lance will probably be one of the last recorded interviews that we do, right? Because that one was already in the can. And I think what we're going to be doing is just a lot more lives. I'm really excited. I'm excited in the direction we're going to go. And with that, we're way over. Good night, everybody.
Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events live as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent.
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontents Antifa. Fuck you.
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.